you to the wonderful world of 4-H, and we are going to be a 4-H club today. I'm going to treat you just like I would my students for a little while, and then we'll have a session afterwards. So how many of you know anything about 4-H, or have heard anything about 4-H before? And this is a point in time when kids will say, you know what is 4-H, or my brother did 4-H, or, you taught my mama. I'm in that now, so I've been around a while, and those kinds of things. So just kind of a general intro, and I've introduced myself, and then before we can go on and let me tell you all the cool and exciting and fun things that we're going to get to do this year in 4-H, it's really important that we learn a little bit about the history of 4-H, wouldn't you think? So that we know kind of the background of where we're coming from. So, guys, I need 3 volunteers. And I can tell you're not real 4-Hers because at this point they're all jumping up and down and wanting to be a volunteer. All right, Lauren, Caroline, and I do need one gentleman. By default. By default. Oh, well, I could have got Rich, sorry. But who's place?
You're next.
All right, so up front, Glenn, if you will you please hold that for me? Caroline, will you hold that for me? And Lauren, will you hold that for me? And y'all can kind of come on up right up here. And they're going to help me tell you the story, the history of 4-H. Now, anytime in this history lesson, if you hear me say, excuse me, anything about tomatoes, Caroline's going to jump up and down, hold that tomato above her head, and all the girls in the room are going to say, salsa. Practice that with me. Tomatoes. Salsa. Good job. All right. Anytime in this situation you hear me say anything about corn, Glenn's going to hold up that ear corn shaker, and all the boys in the room are going to say, sweet corn. Let's try that one time. Corn.
Sweet corn.
For our purposes today, we may all say them together since they're kind of outnumbered. All right, and then if you hear me say anything about the University of Georgia or Cooperative Extension, Lauren's going to hold up our UGA sign, and we're all going to call the dogs. Let's step back just a little bit so we won't be blocking her vision. So we're all going to call the dogs. Now, if you live in South Georgia, there's only, like we do, there's only a few in the classroom who may know what you're talking about. So you have to, emulate it for them. So we're all going to call the dogs. Everybody get your arms up. Good dogs. Sickle. Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh, they love it. All right. So it's a listening activity. Listening's a part of the CRCT. Had a moment there. So listening skills. So let's listen up. And depending on how rowdy your group may be at this time, you can quietly go into your story and reel them in that way. And that's usually how I start. I start, once upon a time, a long, long time ago, way back in 1904. Ooh, that's a long time ago. The school superintendent in Newton County, Georgia, Mr. G.C. Adams, he came up with a new idea. You see, he had been worried. He was just losing sleep at night, worrying about the boys in his county. And times were starting to change in our country, and he was just worried that the boys in his county were not progressing with the times. You see, what did most families do for a living back in 1904? They were farm families, exactly right. And even though that's a great thing, and we need farmers, things were changing. The farming techniques were changing. Production was changing. How they do things was changing. And he was worried about his boys not keeping up with the standards, keeping up with the times. So, to help his students, be better prepared for the future, Mr. Adams contacted professors at the University of Georgia, College of Agricultural and Environmental Sciences. Go dogs! And those research scientists were so excited. And those research scientists were so excited. They were so excited because they had been doing all these weird but interesting experiments on crop production. And they were just looking for someone to put that into practice. So here comes Mr. Adams' boys. And they're like, we can do that. We can take all that new knowledge you've got and we'll put it into action and see if it really works. So that's exactly what they did. So the boys in Newton County started doing all these new crops and rotations and all kinds of different ways of growing corn. And so they actually needed them to test these new techniques. And that's what they did to meet the needs of both the University of Georgia College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, go dogs, sing 'em, ooh, 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 and Mr. Adams' boys. The boys came together and started planting new varieties of corn. Sweet corn. And they harvested tremendously large amounts of corn. Sweet corn. And they had all these cool corn contests at the fair. Sweet corn. And things were good. They were good. So to meet the needs of both those University of Georgia College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences specialists, go dogs, sick 'em, ooh, ooh, ooh. Mr. Adams' boys decided they needed a club. They were doing such great things. Let's have a club. We don't have a club. So they came together and formed the very first Boys Corn Club. Sweet corn. And in the early days, that's when they did all the experimenting with corn and did great stuff. Oh, corn, I said it again. Sweet corn. And so, girls, are y'all feeling a little left out?
Yeah.
Well, they were too. The girls in 1904, around that time, 1905, they were feeling left out too. It's like, gosh, the boys are having all the fun. They had this cool corn club.
Sweet corn.
We need a club too. But we don't want to grow corn. That's a boy thing.
Sweet corn.
We want to grow delicious, nutritious, red, juicy, yummy tomatoes. Salsa. And so they did. They planted these tomato plants.
Salsa.
And they harvested these great, delicious looking tomatoes.
Salsa.
And they canned their tomatoes.
Salsa.
And they decided, well, what are we going to name our club? We're going to the fair. We're having these contests with our delicious tomatoes.
Salsa.
So, what do you think they named their club, girls? They named their club the Girls Tomato Candy Club.
Salsa.
They were real outside the box back then. So the girls, they grew and they canned their tomatoes for competition.
Salsa.
And that was the beginning of the very first Girls Tomato Candy Club.
Salsa.
Well, 10 years later, the Smith-Lever Act was passed in Congress, and it established the very first Cooperative Extension Service.
Go dogs, sick 'em.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. And it wasn't until that time, under the leadership and the guidance of the Cooperative Extension Service,
Go dogs, sick 'em.
that the Boys Corn Club
Sweet corn.
and the Girls Tomato Candy Club
Salsa.
came together and formed one club. What do you think that club's called?
4-H.
4-H, exactly right, Jennifer. It's the 4-H Club, as we know it. It is. And each month, someone like myself, representing the Cooperative Extension Service and UGA, College of Ag and Environmental Sciences,
Go dogs, sick 'em.
we'll come to your school and do special 4-H programs. And just like Mr. Adams used information from the college to help his boys learn, we'll be doing that same thing with you. Today, you can go home and tell your parents that you are a student of the University of Georgia College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. Go dogs, sick 'em. Ooh, ooh, ooh. 4-H has changed. We're no longer just a farm club, and it's come a long way since the very first clubs. And yes, we still have a lot of projects that relate to agriculture, and that's very, very popular, but we have a lot of other topics that are newer and more up to date that you can participate in as well. Okay, well at this time I'd say let's give our volunteers a hand. And I would take their items and usually give them a sticker or a 4-H pencil or something like this. Giving volunteers is usually not a problem in 5th grade. They all want to be the center and they all want to volunteer. I have before grabbed them up here, not telling them what they were volunteering for, and said, okay, now get ready to dance. You know, boy, that'll shock them like crazy. But after this time, then we'd go over and do enrollment cards. We all know what how some enrollment cards can be sometimes. And we picked up some cool information in a kind of a talk session last class that I might share with you. But while they're doing their enrollment cards, I would go around and place various little objects on desk around the room. And I went ahead and put these out now. So once their enrollment cards were taken up, I'd say, as you can see, there's a bunch of different little items out on your desk. And I would call on, for example, would you hold up what you see on your desk right there and tell us what it is and what in the world do you think it has to do with 4-H? It's money. Money! Do you think we're going to pay you to be in 4-H? Be nice, wouldn't it? But what do you think money has to do with 4-H? And that would just kind of open up a whole conversation. And if the conversation is not going the way you want it to, just redirect us. You know, we don't get paid to be in 4-H, but you could win a 4-H scholarship later on when you're going to college. Or we have fundraisers that help you raise money to go to summer camp or various things. So you can direct the conversation to go exactly the way you want it to. Miss Caroline, what do you have right there in front of you?
Pan.
A pan. What does a pan have to do with 4-H?
Cooking.
Cooking. All right. Well, that's exactly right. We do have projects where you actually can prepare a food item. If that's not your thing, we have projects where you can talk about food safety or how to be safe in the kitchen or how to eat healthy. And you can go on and on about various things. And these are just random items that I just picked up one time and threw in my handy-dandy beginning 4-H box over there. Miss Kimberly, you have something kind of right there. What is that?
It's a picture frame.
That's partially worked upon.
Yeah.
What in the world would something like that have to do with 4-H?
I put out pictures in it from different activities.
Oh, cool. You could put your pictures in it from going to camp or doing project achievement, or maybe your project is arts and crafts. You know, maybe you're really crafty or artistic and you could do some kind of creative design. And you could direct that conversation to go, you know, on and on. Same thing right here in front of Elaine. Sunglasses. Camp. Camp. And at this time, a lot of 5th graders don't have a clue about camp yet, so that's how you could direct that into that thing. I might even ask Sarah to hold up what she had first. She has a starfish. Why would a starfish have to do with 4-H? I've had everything from science to animals to the beach or ocean, and yeah, we could direct it to 4-H camps that take place at the beach. You can direct it to environmental science, any kind of project area that goes along with that. So then, you know, talk about camp first, and then yeah, we're so cool we have to wear shades in 4-H, you know, because we're doing so many cool, interesting things. Enjoy that one right there in front of you. This is always a big hit with 5th graders. Yeah, they're like, woo, targets, we get to shoot. And then you can go in and talk about your SAFE programs if you have those in your county. We have a really big BB team, volunteer-led program in our county, and so that's one of the things they've heard about in Colquitt County that are really interested in, wanting to get on that team. What do we have to do? And so we'll talk a little bit about that. We could even talk, Elaine here has a rain gauge. That could be another topic of conservation, acid rain, you know, any kind of environment thing there. And then Lauren, you have medal. She has an award, a medal. And they don't know what project achievement is. It's on the back of that one, but they don't have a clue yet. But in Colquitt County, we actually go in and do fall project achievement. So as soon as we get through an intro to 4-H, we jump right into project achievement. We used to do it and incorporate it in January along with the writing test they go through. But you'd have to say, okay, now this is something you're going to get to do at the end of school. I found out if we can jump right into it in the fall, while they're really pumped up and excited, they love it. So this when I explain, you know, all these things we talked about here today can be put into a short presentation. And we explain, talk about project achievement. Of course, we always have a reward trip for those who compete afterwards and different things. So anything you have in your office that you've used for various things that you've picked up here or there, you can throw in that box and you can elaborate and make this part of the class as long as you need to. We have actually an hour in most every class that we go into in the 5th grade. So depends on how long it takes them to do those enrollment cards as to how long we have. Then we would actually go over our newsletter with all the up-to-date things that are going on that they can start taking part in at first. And one thing we've done before, and it was kind of successful, and we may try it again, is, at the next club meeting, if you have brought your newsletter back with your parent's signature on it, we gave them a little treat of some little 4-H racer or something, whatever we had. And that way at least I knew parents read it, instead of parents calling me up and complaining because their child didn't get to go to camp, because I didn't tell them about it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I did. But they did call and apologize because she found it all in his book bag. The opening, we always give out a parent handout, a parent guide, and in our county we're very heavily Hispanic populated, so we try to do most things in English and Spanish version for our parents. A lot of the times the children will read it to them, but I find it's very helpful if the parents can read it themselves. So we kind of do that. Then we'll go into and do some, depending on our time, depending on your time, activities in your friends' books. Now, this is a lot, the new friends book is just a lot more kid-friendly than the old ones we used to have. It's only 4 pages compared to what, 11 or 12 that never seemed to get done, but you had to check them off so they could get their stickers or whatever for being completed their books. But this first page is basically the history. And you know that if you ask them to read this on their own, it would take them forever. They wouldn't comprehend that much of it. Even if you had like round robin reading of it, they just don't seem to get it as much as what we just did. What that is this. That activity we did is this in a nutshell. We do like to do this page, so I always have my teachers have officers elected before we come to the first meeting, because we don't know the kids and we don't have time to hold an election process and do all that when we're going right into project achievement on the next one. The teachers know the kids by this time. They know which ones parents can take them to our leadership officer training on a Saturday. Of course, I have them sign a form saying they can. They know which ones are responsible and things like that, where we're just walking in cold and we don't know that. So that's a big help. But so we'll go ahead and kind of fill out this page. This is our 4-H club, and I give them the opportunity, like for one of our schools, we have 5 4-H classrooms. And, they're all at one school, so they don't want to be called the Odom 4-H club. They want to be called something different. So each classroom, they'll let them choose a name. If they want to be the Space Rockets or whatever, that's fine. That's the Space Rocket 4-H club I know is Miss So-and-so's classroom at this school. So we just kind of give them that opportunity to do some of that stuff. So most of the time, they just want to be called, Miss Dunn's classroom. That's fine. Whatever they want to do. And we have time to implement, we'll do. A little heads up, little tip here that I've done. I do let them do this activity. I like to do this activity with them because you'll be surprised at how many kids have no clue where they live in the state of Georgia. So it's always good for them to find the county they live in compared to everything else. But I also use this when I'm doing camp promotion most of the time, because as I was telling the earlier group, I've drawn the outline of Georgia so many times on a board, they just think I'm marvelous at it. But you know, when you do it over 500 times, and over the years, you get pretty good at it. But then we do a geology type lesson. We'll divide it into quadrants. We'll do some labeling of the quadrants. They don't know what borders their state. So we go into what, you know, what's on this side, and we'll label it on the board, and then we'll mark, they'll get to write, you know, in our county, we're Cockpit County, and the big interlocking CC is our school emblem, so we'll put that on our county, and then we'll go in and find the camps, and I'll talk about a little bit of the geography of the land that these camps are at, and what goes on in those areas. Teachers love it, but they don't have time to do that at all. So you can even do this if you had the time in your club meeting. You could talk about, you know, where we're at and where the camps are at, and where different, you know, parts of Georgia are at. You know, we're in the coastal plains area of Georgia, so when we're talking and doing the barrier island, we talk about all the landscaping there. So just that outline of Georgia is very helpful for numerous lessons that we do in Georgia 4-H. So then we would just kind of finish up and have a question and answer time. But by then our time's really up, so we have to teach them the actual 4-H pledge, and we'd have it put up on the screen, or if we're in a place that didn't have it, we try to have our banner, and we'd go through the motions and teach them how to do the 4-H pledge, and we'd have our officers ready for the next club meeting. So, any questions? Well, I hope what I've shared with you today will help you, maybe give you a different perspective on something that you've been doing for a long time, and just kind of give you some refreshment. Do we have any new people? Like one new? How long have you been with us?
Since
May, okay. All right, and then there's some of us who have been around for a while. Yeah, I've been around for a while. Like I said, I've been teaching children. Kimberly.
One thing that you talk about that at the end, teaching them the thing that we've been doing the last couple of years with our name tags.
Oh, exactly. Kimberly and Caroline are my assistants. They help me. So, yes, we do a name tag. That's what I should have said put in here. And one of the officers, and it's on cardstock. It has a place. It has the clover emblem on the front, and it has a place for them to write their name. We just ask them to put their name, first name in big letters, so we do that. But on the back side of that name tag, it has the 4-H pledge, the motto, the emblem, which is all a part of our opening program that our officers will do it the next month, so that we don't have to print it out and try to give it to them. They don't memorize it, believe me, they forget it as soon as we walk out the door. But one of the officers is responsible for taking up those name tags, putting them in their 4-H box that stays at their school, and then handing them out before we come to each club meeting. And so there they have, when the president says our motto, what is our motto, and it's written. And actually I think I've kind of adapted Jennifer's script, for lack of a better word, to go along with that. But we put it where on the name tag, where it's right there, where
They can see that
it.
part, and then we can see their name. So whenever they have a question, we don't have to say you in the blue shirt. We can say Tommy or Joe or whatever.
And you know, you always learn the names of the ones who are the worst kids. Not necessarily the worst kids, I don't want to say that. The ones who are the most disruptive. So you never really learn the name of the good kid that's sitting over there, you know, doing everything that they're supposed to do. But if they're
So
yeah.
do you take the boxes, or do the teachers bring
We usually leave a small box in the classroom so that if they have their friends' books, like our project chairman is responsible for those, or the vice president one, I can't remember, they'll put them in there. She lets us keep a small box, and I leave a set of flags, you know, the little flags that we get that you can order. I'll leave a set of flags in the box, and they can put their friends' books in there. Their name tags can stay in there, and they give us a spot for that in each classroom.
When kids aren't there, they get those. They are supposed
Yeah.
to. One of those are responsible for that.
Yeah, one of the officers are responsible for taking up anything for, usually it's the secretary, because the secretary takes the role. So, thank you, Karen, for bringing that up. I totally forgot about that. I should have put that in the box. But any other questions or any comments, thoughts?
When you do the state of Georgia part, I do what you do also. I do ask them how many counties in the state of Georgia? I'm
We do.
amazed at who does not know
Yeah,
that.
most of them don't
And
know
then
that, you're
I
right.
Tell them to, if they do the camps, then I'll say, where's Wasiga in relation to where you live? And they have to tell me north, east, northwest.
Exactly.
and
We
incorporate
label the
cardinal
state
directions
first,
and-
we'll go like, we just
Yeah.
do our same districts, northwest, northeast, southwest, southeast.
So
And so many of our kids in our area, Jennifer, that we live in southeast
they
Georgia.
like that. They like
So,
that.
yeah, the more of those kinds of concepts you can bring in, the more it's meeting some standards that teacher can't reach, because they just don't have time. So they really like that, and the kids, the kids just don't know. They don't get it anywhere. So, they don't. Good, thank you. If you have any other questions anytime or any comments, want to add anything, just because it's in writing and doesn't mean it's not adaptable to you, or doesn't mean you can't call me and say, well, we did it this way and it worked great. I'm all about sharing and helping. You know, if you got a thought that helps somebody else even better, I'm good with that. Help me out. Just because I've been doing it a long time doesn't mean I can't do it better. So thank y'all. Y'all have a good afternoon.
Thank you.